Support for WCBU's On Deck comes from Jaguar Land Rover Peoria on Allen Road, providing personalized service with every certified pre-owned Land Rover. Benefits include a 165-point inspection and a 1-year unlimited mile warranty. More at jaguarlandroverpeoria.com.
It's been a bumpy road to a new control tower at the Peoria International Airport. That's just one of the things you'll want to hear about to start your day for Wednesday, August 7th. I'm Colin Shope, and this is WCBU's On Deck. First on deck today, the city of Havana is picking up the pieces after the roof of the landmark 110-year-old Lawford Theater collapsed. Havana Fire Chief Matt Fleege says the incident happened around 5:15 p.m. Monday. He says a preliminary assessment shows the pitched roof that was put on the building in the 1980s was not anchored to the wall the theater shares with Havana City Hall.
Over time, between water damage and high wind load and things like that, the roof was actually shifting, and then it shifted enough that there was nothing to support the structure anymore on the roof line.
Fleege says no one was inside the theater when the collapse occurred. The fire chief says his department and city officials are working with the property owner to secure the building site as quickly as possible.
The south wall that is still standing, that is a concern to public safety that needs to be brought to the ground, along with the rest of the roof structure that is still on the front portion of the building, which is the north end of the building.
Fleege says the adjacent buildings, including City Hall, did not sustain any damage, but he says the Never-Ending Story bookstore to the east of the theater lost power and will stay closed until the electricity can be restored. While City Hall is expected to reopen today, Fleege says some areas near the theater will remain closed off until the safety concerns are addressed. Reporting for this story comes from Joe Deacon. Here's some other stories we're following in the WCBU newsroom. Former Peoria Township Supervisor Frank Abdenauer is running again for his old job, this time as an independent. And Wall Street reacted favorably to Caterpillar's second quarter sales and revenue report on Tuesday. Plus, the National Weather Service has wrapped up its assessment of the July 15th derecho with a grand total of 10 tornadoes recorded. Find more of these stories and all the details at WCBU.org. The process to replace the aging air traffic control tower at the General Wayne A. Downing Peoria International Airport has faced some bumps in the road. WCBU's Joe Deacon reports.
Director of Airports Gene Olson says funding holds the key to the complex project to replace Peoria International Airport's outdated current air traffic control tower, a plan that's been in the works for several years. Olson says the project was chosen to receive grants through the $1.2 trillion bipartisan federal infrastructure bill that was passed in 2021. He said the original belief was that two separate awards would each cover about half the total cost.
They awarded the first grant. The second grant they announced but didn't award because we didn't have bids in hand yet. And the reason we didn't have bids in hand was because the FAA, their standards for what a control tower should be had changed so much in the 5 years between when we finished the design and when we were getting ready to build it that we had to go back and do almost a year's worth of redesign.
Olson says after the year's worth of redesign work, the project went back out for construction bids in March.
The bids came in way high, beyond what we had the ability to fund. And so we had to go back and kind of rethink the project. So what we did was we split the project into two construction phases.
Olson says those phases would be to build the two sections of the new building separately.
So there's a control tower shaft, which is the tall, skinny part that has the glass room on top. That's the expensive part. And then there's a base building that has the administrative offices and communications equipment and backup power and all that kind of stuff. So we have enough funding lined up to be able to build the base building first.
Olson says they reworked the tower design plans and put that part of the project back out for bids at the end of June.
Those bids actually came in better than we thought they were going to. And so we've got that lined up, and I expect that we'll get that other half of the grant that was announced but not awarded yet. We'll get that like any day now.
However, Olson says the full price tag to build the new tower has increased.
We thought originally that this project was going to cost about $27 million to build, and right now the unfunded portion of it is $27 million. So we're looking at almost $60 million to build this project.
Olson says there's one other wrinkle they've encountered. Current work leading up to the base building construction is related to mine mitigation.
There was I think it was called the Clark coal mine, that I believe was closed in about 1924 or 1927. So it's about 100 years ago. And that mine starts on Farmington Road, a couple of blocks east of Maxwell Road. And it's all sealed up now. You can't get there or can't get in. But that's where it started. And it was about 80 feet deep there. And then it went down kind of Maxwell Road and got wider and wider as it went south. And it stopped somewhere in our parking lot.
Olson says in the 1960s, steps were taken to address the mines that were underneath what was, at that time, the new terminal.
They drilled holes underneath the building and then injected grout in there to stabilize that so there wouldn't be a collapse. Well, here we are, 50 years later, and we're going through the same process for the new control tower.
Olson says that process is currently underway in a small portion of the parking lot, as well as the footprint of the new control tower.
Down there, it's around 200 feet deep. So we're drilling holes down 175 to 200 feet deep and injecting grout in there so that if there is a collapse, it will be far enough away that it won't hurt the tower.
Olson says, barring any additional setbacks, they hope to have the base building construction finished in about a year and hope to get funding to build the tower by early next year.
We'll probably have bids on the street in January, probably take bids by the end of February. And then if the finances are all arranged, we'd probably start on the tower shaft itself in May or June of next year.
Olson says once the new tower is ready, it will require a commissioning process where the current tower remains in operation to make sure all the systems are working. For WCBU's On Deck, I'm Joe Deacon.
Now, before we let you go, see the musical based off the hit film When Mean Girls High School version opens tonight at the Peoria Players Theater. That show starts at 7:30 p.m. And that's all for today. You can subscribe to WCBU's On Deck podcast on the NPR app, Apple, Spotify, or YouTube Music.